Gilbert, Greg, Steve, you ready to talk a little basketball?
Yes, we are, Rick.
Ooh.
Psychos and sickos unite for a road tripping edition of the PHNX Suns show. Of course, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Download Bet365 app. Use code PHNX365. Deposit 10. Place a bet for 5. Get $200 in bonus bets. I'm Rick. That's Gilbert. We've got Greg, Steve, and the freckled Mamba behind the Mac, making all of the magic happen. Okay,
It's Aiton behind.
Aiton behind the Mac. Our good Samaritan, Ayrton behind the Mac. I'm Eric.
I'm calling myself Steven.
That's Gil. That's Espo. That's Steven.
There you go.
I'm sorry, Steven.
Good job.
Steven with the PH.
Good job.
So if I shortened your name, would it just be Steph then?
Don't shorten the man's name. It'd be
Why would
SPG.
you- why would you shorten my
It's coming from the
name?
guy who goes by Espo.
My name
I didn't
You shortened your own name.
I didn't do that. Other people gave me the nickname, and it stuck. You don't give yourself.
Never
your own
shorten a man's
nickname.
name, right, Gil?
Just call me G.
Okay, there we go. Let's get shorter. We got S, we got E, G, and then I guess I'll be R. Then we got A behind the Mac. But of course, everybody in the chat hanging out with us. Thank you so much. The Phoenix Suns coming off of quite
An
a
episode
win.
of Sesame Street.
I'm saying all this spelling and whatnot.
Well,
This
how about
episode brought to you by the letter S.
can we count to 9? Because that's how many games above 500 the Phoenix Suns are on a 3-game winning streak. The best team in the NBA since Christmas, record-wise, is an 8-2 record. And now sit in front of a 6-game road trip, which we will preview. We'll talk about how Jalen Green's imminent return doesn't just affect the team as a whole, but a couple of individual key pieces on the Suns. Plus, we are going to talk about this staunch Phoenix Suns defense. So grab a drink, grab a snack, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let's talk some basketball, boys. Just real quick, let's look at the standings, of course, presented by our friends over at Phoenix Raceway. Drive into March 5th through the 8th at the link in our description. The Oklahoma City Thunder, of course, still at the top. The San Antonio Spurs in second. The Denver Nuggets at third. Minnesota at fourth. Lakers at fifth. But here's where it gets interesting. The Phoenix Suns have moved up by a half a game into the 6th seed as the Houston Rockets have lost 3 straight. And then the Golden State Warriors are 8th. We won't worry about 9 through 15, but Steven, we couldn't have you on the show for the entire time last night. How are you feeling about the Suns for right now being in an official playoff position?
I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise if anyone's been watching them outside of the Phoenix and Suns fandom because that's what they've been all season long. You look at their record against those teams that have been ahead of them in the standings and how they fared against them, even in the games that they've lost against those teams. That's a team that's where they should be right now. And I feel like they're maybe even a game, or they're even maybe a seeding or two higher than what they actually are in terms of where they're playing right now. So they're in a good space. The job is far from finished. It's about sustaining. Everybody has a hot streak. What about when you add it with the low streak and then getting back to somewhere in between there once the season finishes, and what does that look like going into the playoffs?
Can I send a message to the Lakers right now?
I would love nothing more.
Do you feel that on the back of your neck, LA? Do you feel that tingling? That's the Suns breathing down your neck. And when you lose tonight, the Phoenix Suns will be in 5th. And you're going to have to realize that your fraud asses may never get back there again.
Ooh, that's like a wrestling promo we just cut right there. That
Yeah,
was,
you have to do it when it's LA.
You're going to have to see me on Sunday night.
Again, brother.
Bring it on, brother.
But seriously, though, like I think it's just it speaks to the way they got out of that gauntlet. And coming out of that gauntlet, it wasn't really much of a reprieve because they faced the Thunder not that long after the gauntlet, quote unquote, was over. But the level of basketball that they've been playing since Christmas and like having the best record in the league since then, things are starting to fall into place. There's more that is going to continue to fall into place. And the biggest thing is just put your head down, do your work, and see where it leads you. And I think to your point, Steven, the job is not done. You don't settle the standings after 39 games. They got 43 games left to play, and there will be some peaks and valleys, no pun intended, throughout this. But it's a matter of just kind of trying to stay even keeled as possible as you can. I think that's what this team has been doing all year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting balance for Suns fans, and I'm going to include myself in this, obviously, because we are riding a little bit of a high right now. This is one of the better stretches for any team this entire season in the NBA, obviously outside of like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who won like 20 games straight. And you pass the Rockets, which of course there's some ties there, there's some history there, but it is January. And I think Suns fans should continue to enjoy this, to be in the moment, to celebrate what you've been able to see, but also understand that a 2-8 stretch through 10 games, even though none of us expect that to happen, you know, there's still a lot of time left for things to even out if that's going to happen. So for the Suns, for fans, stay in the moment, appreciate what's going on. But I don't think we're appreciating enough what this team is doing on the defensive side of the ball. Steven, you've pulled some stats that are eye-opening, jaw-dropping as far as painting a picture as to just how good the Suns defense has been all season, but specifically the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, this one is, I think, very, very telling. So on the season, the Suns have, by ratings, the 6th best defense in the league. Specific to the half court, they're 5th. In terms of their defensive field goal percentage, they're tied for 10th in that at 53.8%. And then in terms of their turnover rate that they're forcing to their opponents are turning the ball over on over 17% of their possessions for the season as a whole right now. That's incredible. And you look specific to the post-Christmas break, they're first in defensive rating there at 107.8. In terms of the half court, they're 6th at 93.1. Their defensive field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage, is 50.8. That's first by a couple of percentage points. And then the turnover rate dipped the slightest bit to 16.1 since Christmas, and that's 5th. So there are 9th, excuse me. So they're getting it done and then some. And I think this is them continuing to just find ways to be more comfortable in the things that they're doing, but also continuing to evolve their process. Teams get used to you defending a certain type of way. You have that layer, and then you add a little bit more to it on top of the connectedness, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah, it explains right there how you win 9 of 11 is the defensive end, because we talked about it last night, but when you play solid defense, it gives you margin for error on the offensive side. So even if you have a cold shooting night, you still have that advantage, and they've been fantastic at it.
What I appreciate about those numbers is that you can see it over the season long, and that just shows that this is who this team has been. And, you know, you said defense travels. You can control defense. Shots not falling, you can play hard defensively. Shots not falling, hey, look, you can still be connected. Understand the scouting report. I think what's so unique about this team, there are good individual defenders all on the court together, also executing team defense the way it needs to be executed. And the result is these numbers and the product that we're seeing so far with the team who is doing it on the defensive end, and everything else is kind of following along.
Well, yeah, and that's why it's so reassuring when you look ahead for the rest of the season. On a road trip against good teams, if that's your foundation, not, man, through the last month and a half, the Suns have shot 45% from deep, and Devin Booker's averaging 35, 10, and 6. That's not sustainable for an entire season, but what is going on is, plus, like, again, they've been injured throughout some of this time as well. I think now post-Christmas, you really feel like is the first time they're starting to get a little bit more together, and despite adding Grayson Allen back in, their defense has actually taken a step up, which I think for a casual NBA fan wouldn't be the case. I've really enjoyed listening to what the guys have also had to say about the defensive side of the ball. Royce talked with Steven about the commonality with impactful defenses in the NBA.
I think just communication is the biggest part. All 5 guys out there being connected, talking to each other, covering for each other. I mean, a game of basketball, we don't make mistakes, but it's, you know, how we can limit those mistakes, build off each other, and just, you know, lock in defensively. Defense wins games, creates easy baskets on the offensive end.
So when you think about the term defensive anchor, you usually think about it no different than when people say a team captain or a leader. and it being one specific person that does a specific thing. That's not the truest sense when it comes to championship or winning teams or even companies, best teams, best groups are gonna have multiple leaders that bring something different to the table. Race has been a player that's been a part of some of the better defenses the last decade. The Utah Jazz teams with Rudy Gobert, multi-time consecutive defensive player of the year. Yes, Rudy gets the breadth of that attention because of who he is, a generational defender. But then you got guys like Royce that are providing depth of defensive anchorship and communication, versatility, and just the little things and being able to bridge the gap for your team defensively. So Royce is no stranger. That prompted me to ask him that question because the way they defended with Utah was different than the way that they defended when he was with Brooklyn. Those Brooklyn teams were good enough defensively to get to a KD big toe from going to the finals, and who knows what happens after that. But Royce, again, is mixed in with all of that. Sometimes he's at the point of attack. Sometimes he's guarding bigs. Sometimes he's in the middle of that showing help and things like that. And then fast forward to the Suns, that role is one of those three things on nearly any given possession. And he's just razor sharp with how he's operating with that, with communication, because his experience is just so thorough.
And that's the point I tried to make last night, and I'm glad to hear Royce kind of pointed out that way. He's been in the league for a while, and this is why you have veterans in the locker room, guys who have seen a lot and done a lot and experienced a lot in the league. Devin Booker has seen a lot and done a lot and experienced a lot in the NBA. So, thinking about what Jordan Nada said about him, and it starts when your best player is willing to lock in and on the defensive end and sit down and guard his yard. So when you combine those things, communication is the biggest part of it because that, like they always talk about, the ball travels faster than people can. That's why ball movement is important offensively. Well, defensively, you combat that with talking and working better, working more efficiently like that. So if the communication is at a certain level, your defense will have a high floor. And I think that's what we're seeing with this team. The communication, the execution, and then obviously the know-how and the ability of these guys on the defensive end results in a good defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have a scheme, but if you're not communicating and making sure guys are following that and finding the spots that they need to be in, it doesn't matter what your scheme is. And I hate to keep going back to the last few years, but there was little to no communication on the defensive end. It was pretty obvious, even for those of us that weren't sitting courtside and were just watching on television. And when you communicate, it leads to a lot of good things. I think, again, defense is a lot of effort. And then when you add that communication in, you can overcome a lot of shortcomings by just doing that. And that's what this team has done fantastically this year.
Well, they got some dogs, and that helps out too. Let's hear from one of those dogs. Jordan Goodwin talked about whether their defensive approach has a wear-down effect on their opponents.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of felt it a little bit last night. Early in the game, they was making shots and stuff like that. We just kept wearing on them, but then them open shots, they kind of missed a little bit. I think that's because we just kept wearing on them, making it hard for them. Then we do a good job of putting the star guys in a lot of action on offense, so they're not getting no rest on either end.
And then to that point, the far point on defense, when Oso's on the floor, he gets a lot of attention for the switches that he takes on the perimeter. That puts somebody like you in what people usually say is a disadvantage against a big, but you are consistently good with guarding those bigger guys in the post. What kind of goes into, okay, switch with Oso, you got a big on you, being able to win that catch point and then just kind of being physical?
I think it's all been on the string, especially that second unit. We do a lot of switching, where we're kind of all like size when we're out there. But we just trust each other. I know if I get rolled down with a big, I know I got my low man on the back, and when that shot go up, we all crash, we all box out. So it's definitely, we're on the string right now with it.
Being on a string defensively is the next step from the communication, right? Like understanding how to communicate with one another and being connected. We talked a lot about having a lot of players on the roster who do some of the things similarly, and that allows you to be connected like that, understanding, like he said, the switchability. We talk so much about how guys are switching defensively, Oso being one of the guys. And then we see those kind of funky lineups sometimes with multiple guards, but it allows them to be interchanged. It allows you to pass somebody off and communicate those things and work on the schemes that you try so hard. So to hear him explain exactly what we're seeing and really kind of confirm a lot of what we see, and it makes it make sense with how the defense could be so connected because they have those moving pieces that allow them to play that way.
has passing off guys and kind of channeling them in the direction
Mhm.
that you want them to go been a big difference for this defense? Because to me, it's looked that way, but I'm interested in how you felt, Steven.
Yeah, that's in comparison to like last season.
Last season, yeah.
Yeah, because they have guys that actually want to guard the basketball for one, and I think that starts with everything. If you want to do something, it's going to have a certain type of urgency and desire for it to be successful in how you approach it. So I think that starts it. The guys that they're sending ball handlers into in terms of funneling them towards Mark Williams and Oso in particular, different type of activity, different type of size and urgency that they operate with as well in comparison to the front court from last season too. So I think those things matter. I think also the other thing is that they're picking up guys so much higher up the floor. Talk about that a little later, but I think that's a big part of it too.
And I think you hear the word communication, and for a lot of people, they think, oh, there's just somebody out there talking during the game, which obviously is true. You look at a guy like Draymond Green who like directs defenses, or LeBron who calls out, offensive sets as they're coming, and that's a part of defensive communication. I think what people don't think about is when you're sitting in film, when you're practicing, talking to the guys that you're playing with, saying, what do you like to do here? What should we do here? And having an unspoken understanding of switching, of understanding where Oso's going to be, where Mark likes to be, where they like to be funneled, who likes to take what type of matchup, so that when you're defending on transition, it's more instinct than it is somebody's yelling at me to do something. I think that's kind of the underrated part when it comes to chemistry. You see chemistry on offense. Oh, it's ball movement. These guys, they share the ball. It's a little harder to understand as a concept defensively. I feel like this team has really great and underrated defensive chemistry, which comes from communication before they play the games.
No, I like that because you don't really talk about, like you said, defensive chemistry that much and people's tendencies, and knowing that, hey, I have two guards who I'm playing with, but one might like to do something a little bit differently, or might have a different tendency, different strengths, weaknesses. We know that certain guys are a little more aggressive, and we talk about where they pick up the ball, but being more aggressive and going for steals, or who can you set up and kind of get to a place where you can play the passing lane. You might play the passing lane differently if one person's on the ball versus somebody else is on the ball. And I think that is honestly just a special innate skill that this team has. I think that they have turned the corner and looked way more comfortable guarding together than some teams do, because that type of stuff takes time. So I think that is a big reason why this defense has been so good. Again, give credit to the coaching staff for allowing them to figure it out, but credit to them for communicating, like you talked about, beyond just what's being said on the court, but off the court, and how you're working on things in practice and film sessions, things like that.
Yeah, and being connected is kind of the overarching word for all of this. Coach talked with Steven last night about the connectedness of this defense.
Yeah, a lot of times, we want to take care of the paint. We want to take care of the rim, but we also want to get there on the catch. A lot of that's just effort. It's just all-out effort. Our pressure on the ball hopefully helps us save us just an extra second on some of that. But the way to take away the three-point line in this league is tough, and the way to do it is a lot of times just all-out effort, and then knowing that your teammate has your back to be able to be there and support. And we're getting in some rotations, we're getting in some peels, we're getting into some high-level stuff because of our effort and then communication.
So I think there's a couple of things that he subtly mentioned there. One of the biggest ones was that hoping that their pressure on the ball buys them an extra second or two at the end of the clock. That weaponizing of the shot clock, like all of these concentrated, intentional layers of pressure, the pickup points, to being directional at the point of attack, to the switching, all of those things you want to just chip away at that shot clock. 24 turns to 16 real quick, and you're just barely getting it across the 8-second line. And now you only got so many more seconds left to actually get into a point of attack. What's the organization of that? Are you actually running something, or is it a predictable kind of sequence in the things that you can anticipate? Take away a couple more seconds, and now you got the last 6 or 5. Now it's about isolation at that point, and that's where all of those guys are at their best. You don't have to worry about a screen. You don't have to worry about handoffs or anything. It's just one-on-one defense, even if it is Mark Williams or also on a premier guard. The Suns are okay with that because those guys understand distance of impact in terms of contesting shots. And I think that's what makes them good. It's tried and it's tested for sure, but I think they trust the game plan, and they trust that they know, okay, when we do this and teams are racking up shot clock violations or taking shots within the last 5 seconds, that's not a good quality shot that they're taking, and that springboards us into our offense.
And that's without even taking into consideration the turnovers that they've been forcing when they're putting that pressure on in the backcourt, which has been a fantastic thing that's coming out of it as well. But I think you're right. I don't think people take into account how much taking even a few seconds off in that backcourt and not letting them take it easy, not let them do one of those where the ball rolls and then you pick it up kind of thing and saving time. Just being there from word one. In the backcourt. It's such a big part of why this defense has been successful.
As I was listening to both of you talk through that, the thing that comes to mind is small things add up. Half a second here, half a second there, half a second there. Next thing you know, it's 2 seconds off of a 24-second clock, which isn't that much time to begin with. And thinking about making teams uncomfortable with the pressure, putting them in positions or spots on the court that they're not used to running their sets from. And what Coach Ott talked about is just the effort. People want to do it. And that's more than half the battle. If guys want to do it, the proof is in the fact that you're winning doing this. So guys are going to be playing hard. We're seeing this team, everybody's giving at least 100% effort in doing these things, and that's the biggest key. Communication, effort goes into that and all of these things, but the effort in doing those things is why it's been successful.
This is a team that's had to win on the margins a lot this season because of the injuries they've sustained, because honestly of the talent deficit they have with some of the top teams in the Western Conference, at least on paper. And so many times we'll be sitting here, we'll be watching the games, we'll be on a watch long and be like, how are they still in this game? How are they up in this game? Feels like they should be losing. Feels like they shouldn't be up by 15. Like, how many times are they blowing a team out and we're like, oh, they're making a mistake here. And then you look at the scoreboard and they're up 12. That of the what you three just talked about is the silent killer, right? They say it's heart disease. No, it's the PHNX Suns. Like, they are silently taking away bits and pieces of opponents' offense and making them uncomfortable. And then boom, all of a sudden you're down 8, or your 8-point lead has shrunk to 2. And when this team finds a little bit of momentum, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they stack wins, or they stack kills, as Steven says, which is 3 stops in a row. Overall, just extraordinarily impressive from the Suns in the defensive end. Obviously, the addition they're getting will look more on the offensive end in Jalen Green, which we'll do here in a second after our upcoming break. But what are your final thoughts on what's just been one of the more impressive defenses that we've seen in Phoenix, maybe ever, but especially in quite some time?
All-out effort, like Coach Ott said in that clip. That's the pedigree of this defense and really the calling card of this team, and that's been the most impressive thing. And Sean, no, Coach Ott has not called me yet about poaching Steven, but I assure you that call will be coming.
You're not getting a call. We're just going to show up one day. Seems to be like, I can't make it. We have a film at 3. And what do you mean film? Oh, Coach Ott hired me to be on the stand.
I told him he's got to give me 2 weeks, so it's just what happens.
My thing with their defense, in the post-Christmas stretch, they're 7th best in opponent points in the paint. And I think that's something they struggle with early in the season. And the other part that they have struggled with, too, is their pick-and-roll defense hasn't been the best. That's something that they have good things that they have in process there, but the execution isn't always there. Now, that's still arguably the hardest action to guard consistently, effectively. So it's not like a blemish per se, but it's something to keep in mind as they go on this road trip, because there's some teams that can do some things in pick and roll that if they're not sharp, that can be something that kind of clips them in some of these games that are largely going to be played within that kind of clutch spectrum.
Yep, I was going to say defense travels, and they're about to travel a lot. So we'll see if the defense comes with them, because they're going to need it to.
Not Harlem, but the Globetrotting.
Bars. Look, we're excited for a lot of reasons about this upcoming road trip. Feels like the PHNX Suns are at a high. But how much higher can they get with the return of Jalen Green? We'll tell you what Coach Jordan Ott had to say about what to look forward to at this upcoming road trip. And what we're going to do is look at a couple individual players that will benefit the most from Jalen Green's return. It's an exciting time in Phoenix, and we'll get excited on the other side of our first break. It's a new year, so why not ring it in, having lots of fun with our friends over at the Arizona Lottery. The thing I love the most about the Arizona Lottery is they're always finding new ways for you to have fun with scratchers, like multiplier scratchers that are the perfect way to add to your life. With multiplier scratchers from the Arizona Lottery, you can multiply the good things, like vacation, relaxation, and celebration. Who doesn't like all 3 of those things? Who wouldn't want those multiplied, because with over $270 million in prizes, $270 million in prizes, you could win big enough to do more of the things that you love. Multiplier tickets start at just $1. They have prizes up to $5 million. And of course, you know where we're all going to get our multiplier scratchers and all of our Arizona Lottery scratchers. It's with our friends over to Circle K. Drive over there, pick up your scratchers, get a good deal on whatever, head on back. And plus, it's a fun little game too. If you're thinking about a birthday gift, maybe a Valentine's Day gift, whatever you want to do. With access to over 3,500 retailers across the state, you can play whenever and wherever you'd like with Arizona Lottery. There it is.
You know what that's the sound of? That's the sound of NASCAR.
That's right.
And the NTT IndyCar Series coming together in the same weekend out at Phoenix Raceway. Gil, I know you haven't been out there, but it is one of the coolest venues that you can go to in sports. You got to check it out. It's out there actually in a mountain range, and it is beautiful. And you know what? The best thing is you get the best access in motorsports when you go out there. Steven, you can go inside the garage, walk the track, meet the drivers, catch a pre-race concert. It's fantastic. And you don't get closer in any other sport. And you can upgrade your tickets to the Desert Diamond Casino infield experience. I've done it. You'll love it too. Plus, Eric, you can see NASCAR Cup champion Kyle Larson out there where he won it all. Yes, you can, Eric.
Even me.
It's the NASCAR NTT IndyCar Series weekend in Phoenix, March 5th through the 8th. Secure your seats at the link in our description.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, become a Supporters Club member today, because you get access to exclusive content, exclusive emojis. You get a prepaid super chat for every month that you are a supporter, like Kara, like Sean, like Max, like so many of y'all in the chat. And if you're here every day, just $5, boom, prepaid super chat every single month. It's awesome. We appreciate all of you, including Drew D. Bentley in the chat. Says, love this podcast so much. Don't have many sports fans friends, especially not the Suns. It feels great to know there are other people who love the Suns as much as I do. Thanks, y'all. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, everybody. And guess what? It's only gonna get better, because Jalen Green is hopefully returning during this 6-game road trip. After the game last night, head coach Jordan Ott said, quote, "That's the plan," when talking about a potential return on the road trip for both Jalen Green and our GOAT, Jamari Bouye. Continues by saying, "You hope to get healthy, but we don't know. Got to take steps to get there. We'll be ready to go whenever they come back. One to healthy squad, one to full squad, but we've been able to find different ways to win each night with what we have." So the plan, the hashtag plan, which you've heard quite a bit about, is for those two to return on the road trip, but nothing solid. This is still coach speak, though. Like I'm not concerned by him saying they're not 100% coming back.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think they've learned that there are no 100%. So, setbacks can happen, and you're never sure. So you want to hedge your bet, and that's what it is. It's obvious they're hoping that he gets back, in particular that Jalen gets back during this road trip, but they're also not going to panic if it's when they come back at the beginning of the next homestand either.
A little coach speak, maybe a wink in between it of, hey, if you've been here, if you've been following what's going on, this guy is working out in front of more and more people before the game. We're not just showing you something that you're not going to see for a while, or someone that you're not going to see for a while. So I would assume, especially using like the finish line language as well with that, like we're right there. So we've been patient this long. What's another game or two or a day or two? Who knows?
To quote Kevin Garnett, why would you show me something if I can't have it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he'll be back on this road trip. I mentioned New Year would be around the time that he comes back. Now, I thought he would have already been back by now. So this is getting into the, okay, now what's going on type of space for me, but I do think he'll be back on the road trip.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We'll take a look and predict the road trip here in a second. But when we talk about Jalen Green, and I say specifically we, because I am talking about us, we talk about just how him individually changes the makeup of the team. But what I'm most excited about is how some individual players that we've seen play really well this season, or maybe dip at certain points, will benefit from having who, in theory, should be the second best player back on the court with them. Espo, a lot of people obviously are always going to look at one guy first. It's the guy wearing number 1 in Devin Booker. How do you think he specifically, as the number 1 option, as the point guard of this team, will benefit from having a player like Jalen Green back?
Well, in a lot of ways. I mean, right now his usage rate is at the highest or one of the highest of his career. And when you get Jalen back, you're going to see that drop off. And when you take that kind of pressure, that load off his shoulders, it's going to help him throughout the game. He's going to have a little bit more energy on the defensive end, which he's been very good this year with, but he'll have that. He'll have a little bit more energy at the end of the game to get to the hoop, draw that foul, or hit that three. Like that's a big part of it for me is just the drop in usage rate that we're going to see. That's probably the first thing for me that I think will impact with Jalen Green coming back.
For me with Devin, you make great points for sure. Devin's seen a bottom third percentile of volume attacking closeouts this season. Essentially what that means is there's no one that's been able to create for him. He's always been the one that's doing the creating more often than not. Jalen gives him a direct player to not just do it to the volume that Grayson's been able to, which hasn't been the highest volume evident by the numbers I'm speaking to, but Jalen can just outright be the point of attack guy for the offense, whether he's bringing it up or he's the player that a play is being ran for or actions being ran for. If Devin's one pass away from that, you have to help on Jalen. Now Devin's shooting wide open catch and shoot threes, or he's able to stampede the catch and just get right to the basket and be that guy that's playing the role of Royce O'Neal for someone else and not always having Royce be playing that role for Devin. So I think the rhythm that will add for Devin to be able to play him off the catch significantly more will help him in terms of being that 30-plus point per game scorer that we all agree that he can be. And then the other part for me is Devin just being able to catch and shoot, period.
Yep.
Because he hasn't been able to lean into that. That's been one of his best qualities since he came into the league. It was his calling card coming into the league. People said, this is Klay Thompson that can put the ball on the deck. And he hasn't been able to lean into that kind of top-tier quality so far this season so much.
I found it interesting. 58% of all of Devin Booker's shots this year have come after 3 to 7 or more dribbles, which is by far the highest of his career as well. So to your point, easier shots because he's not going to have to be the guy all the time that's dribbling it like that.
Yep.
He's going to get set up for those shots. And I think just having another big name on the scouting report that teams are going to have to prepare for simply will alter the approach with Devin as well.
And that was the thought I had. It becomes a little bit of a pick your poison for opposing defenses. Some teams have multiple really good point of attack perimeter defenders, but not everybody. Right? So if there's a big drop off from your best defender and your next best defender, all right, well, which one are you going to concede looks to? Are you going to put your best defender on Devin Booker or Jalen Green? Because whichever one you're putting them on, you're living with the other one having their way or having an easier time defensively. And I think that's just, and I know Dillon Brooks has been putting pressure, and that makes it even crazier, right? If he can sustain this level of play, now you got 3 guys that you want to put solid defenders on, and it becomes very problematic for opposing defenses because they kind of just have to get creative or concede something to a guy who's going to make you pay more often than not.
Well, then imagine it with a Colin or a Grayson out there who also can initiate offense. So all of a sudden, multiple, it's a 3-4 headed snake that a defense has to pay attention to.
Yeah, and you hear a lot about the Bradley Beal comparison with the injury and him not playing, but also him being a shooting guard. And I think what is so fascinating about this and what makes it so different is that Jalen is such a different player than Devin Booker. Jalen Green certainly has his flaws, possibly as a playmaker. I think that he's going to be put in a much better position outside of Houston and with Jordan Ott. But as an athletic force, as a dominant top tier, maybe top 5 athlete in the NBA, somebody who can get downhill, take a lot of shots at the paint. Book's been pretty good at that this year and drawing fouls. Having somebody else who can do that while Book stands on the outside, I know that, he's playing really great right now, but that is going to help slowly, again, on the margin, conserve Devin Booker's stamina, his body, for what should hopefully now be a longer season than what a lot of people planned to be. Plus, Jalen is somebody who isn't looked at as a great individual defender, but he gets a lot of deflections. He was part of a really good defense last year, and again, has the tools to be a little bit of a disruptor like Colin Gillespie back there. So Book, in theory, not just playing with guys that will help with him on the offensive end, but in this system with pesky guys that could be irritators on the defensive end, which should in turn take some pressure off of him. And then the last thing for me is the spot up shots. That's great. At the end of the day, like Book's going to have the ball in his hand still a lot, maybe a little bit less than with Jalen Green on the floor now. But when you're sending doubles, when you're facing a team like OKC, who has just religiously sent bodies and bodies and bodies at Devin Booker, as much as Dillon Brooks has been great, and we should give him love, as much as Colin Gillespie has been great, and we can give him love, you're going to be so much more hesitant to send those types of bodies when Jalen Green is on the floor, in addition to one or two more of those guys as well. I just think every small thing gets incrementally easier for Devin Booker, and he's the kind of guy that can turn that into like 3 to 4 points a game, which would put him near 30 on the season.
There's two things that come to mind for me. There's a snapshot embedded in my brain from that first game against the Clippers where Jalen is in like a super high slot pick and roll with Mark Williams. Strong corner is Colin Gillespie deep in that corner. He's a 49.4% catch and shoot three-point shooter this season. Opposite of Jalen in a high opposite slot is Devin Booker. And in the opposite corner is Grayson Allen. They're spaced out significant, almost into the corner of the half court. And Jalen's obviously occupying that left side. That space is something he's never seen in his career. Like ever. And then the other part that you brought up, Gil, the pick your poison part, I think there was a play where Devin set a back screen, or it was like an early offense screen for Jalen. And I think Chris Dunn was guarding Jalen initially. They switched, and now it's DJJ who was guarding Devin that's guarding Jalen. He ends up getting a pick and roll, and then they end up getting a positive result from it after that. I think that part, like you're talking about, DJJ and Chris Dunn are two top-tier point of attack defenders. The thing is, Chris Dunn doesn't have the same size that DJJ does. So they have those guys on those guys specifically for reasons. If you undo that, what advantages does that create for you in your offense? And I think the Suns can cycle through multiple iterations of that consistently and put Devin in position to be more successful naturally after doing so with Jalen.
I think, too, people assume when they hear rim pressure, that just means, oh, he's going to get there. He's going to try to lay it up, but that's going to lead to a lot of open threes.
Absolutely.
Too, because the defense collapses, and again, it's a pick your poison. Do you stop him and abandon those guys in the corner, or let him get that layup? It's going to open up a lot.
I'm pretty sure that's the play that Jalen injured his hamstring again on, was he was driving to the paint and they collapsed and then he passed the ball to somebody in the corner, not to bring up bad memories. I like what JG4 in the chat also says, Suns #1 in steals plus JG fast breaks. That should be an exciting combo. I think a combo of players, Steven, that is interesting to see how they will benefit from Jalen Green's returning are Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen, the vets on this team, the three-point shooters on this team. How do they benefit, and where do they kind of fit into a Jalen Green healthy Phoenix Suns team?
Yeah, I think for one, they help to cover him up a little bit defensively, give him a little bit more easy of a matchup, a little less thinking to do on the defensive end of the floor. So I start there, and the kind of veteran moxie that those two guys have in terms of experience. Those are guys that will be able to uplift Jalen and kind of empower him to be the best version of himself. And then when you get to offense, if Jalen's, to Espo's point, getting not just the glancing blow paint touches, but the deep paint touches that flatten the defense, Jalen is good at kick-out passes. Who's he kicking it out to? Two of the best catch-and-shoot guys in the league, and the third guy I'm not going to mention because one of you guys is going to be bringing him up soon, but that's another guy that could be spaced around him on any given lineup that the Suns are using. So Royce O'Neal, 42.5% on 5.4 catch-and-shoot threes this season. Pretty good, huh? On one more attempt, so he's at 6.5. Grayson Allen shooting 38.5%, also pretty good. I imagine that 38% gets better because the quality of looks he's going to get in lineups with not just Devin, but also Jalen, one or both of those guys, is going to help him significantly. I think those things matter. I think the other thing, though, with Royce and Grayson, I talked about this earlier this season, the volume of closeouts they'll be able to attack. So if you happen to be able to get from help position on Jalen and then you close out against those guys, you're going to be late because you want to run them off the line. So you're trying to get all the way to the line. They can put the ball in the deck. Grayson has shown the ability to, as people on my timeline at least have said, turn into Michael Jordan every once in a while and kind of flash some athleticism that's very surprising. Royce and his connective playmaking has taken a forefront the past week of games, something we've talked about since he got added to the team. And he also has had his floater hitting this season as well. Also, naturally, it's going to open up opportunities for live passes. For another name that we'll get to, I'll let you all speak on that. But I think the organization part and having guys play more to their specific role and niche with the team, that organization factor is going to be profound.
I think I would appreciate you started talking with the defense, because when we talked a lot about the defense to start the show, and we've talked about that kind of being maybe potentially his shortcoming, so to speak. But the fact that Royce and Grayson can make things easier for him, it's no secret that he's athletic, and this is a great scheme, a great defensive team. So thinking about how that happens and that these are guys who can help him defensively, maybe it's less of an issue than we're probably thinking. And obviously what happens on the offensive end is it speaks for itself. We've seen it, but I think that the bigger concern is kind of eased when you look at it that way with those guys next to them, their veteran presence, their know-how, the communication that we've spoken so much about with that team will bring him along. And in turn, sometimes great defense can lead to more offense for Jalen Green and other guys as well.
Well, we've seen Jalen Green buy into a really good defense, an effective one last year, and it made life harder for him on the offensive end because of how dedicated they were to just that side of the ball. I think the beautiful thing about the Suns is that they're equally as dedicated to both, and it's really paying off. It's clear, and there's a lot of people talking about it in the chat, like all the players that are going to benefit from Jalen Green and Jalen Green's going to benefit from. There are two more that we want to highlight specifically. We could do a whole show on this, but there are just two other guys that we want to get into. We'll do that. Plus, we will predict the Suns' 6-game road trip coming up that we should hopefully see Jalen Green and Jamari Bouye back for. We'll get into all of that on PHNX Suns. Don't go anywhere on the other side of our second break. It's never ordinary over here at PHNX Suns, and of course, it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. Not only do they have 90 million users worldwide, but they continue to up the experience for everybody. Some people have success with their bets, like Gil and Ayrton. Some people don't, like me and Espo, but no matter what, we're all on the same playing field. And what I love about Bet365 is they tell you the last 5 games for all the prop bets that you are trying to use. So it's really a skill issue if you don't hit like me. But you know what? You're never out of it. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. So you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use code PHNX365, deposit 10, place a bet for 5, get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 plus, physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, text NEXT-STEP to 53342, or visit promgambling.az.gov. Check out Bet365 today.
Gil, what's your favorite thing to drink?
Water.
Well, you can get that at Circle K, and guess what? You can get a great deal with it as a member of the Inner Circle. Steven, you like saving money on gas?
Who doesn't?
I mean, are you at the Freckle Mamba level? Are you saving 5 cents off?
Because I've been here longer, so yes.
That's right. He is at, because you're a member of the Inner Circle. And when you become a member of the Inner Circle, you'll save 25 cents off per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. So, Gil, when you get your car, we'll make sure you're taken care of there. Then you're going to save 3 cents off. Then you're going to hit the contacts, the Stephen Prugion Garner level, and you're going to save 5 cents off per gallon. But that is not all. I stop at Circle K every morning. I get my 20-ounce bottles of Coke Zero. I buy 3 of them. I'm back at that top level. I'm saving 25 cents off per gallon on my next fill-up. It is fantastic. Great deal on food and other things as well. So become a member of the Inner Circle today. All you got to do is download that Circle K app. You're going to put in a little bit of information for free, and you're going to become a member of the Inner Circle. Terms and conditions do apply. Visit CircleK.com for more details.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We are getting closer to a Jalen Green return, but for the Suns injury report tomorrow, he remains out, so not even upgraded to probable or questionable or doubtful, so something to keep an eye on. Jamari Bouye also remains out.
I wonder if they're even going to change the designation or if it's just going to be from out to he's back.
They did, and correct me if I'm wrong, did they not change his designation for his first return? I thought he was upgraded.
I do not remember.
I thought he was upgraded.
It was so freaking long ago.
It was
literally last year.
It was a really long time ago.
That's before I got here.
But
I was still 41 when that happened. So.
But Gil, one of the things that really sticks in my brain from that first Jalen Green game was immediately the chemistry he seemed to have with Mark Williams, including throwing some passes that if you heard people talk about Jalen Green, they wouldn't say he would be willing to or able to throw to him. You wanted to highlight how the Suns starting center could benefit from Jalen Green's return. What stands out to you with their dynamic?
Well, one, as you just said, I think, thinking about having a dynamic guy like Jalen Green who can get downhill, get the rim pressure that we really haven't seen at a consistent basis throughout the season. Well, now how are opposing big men going to help? And if you're sliding over, that's a drop-off dunk. Or if you're out of position and Jalen just gets it on the rim, Mark Williams is going to clean that up. And we talked about, like you said, Steven, there's going to be some situations where the floor is spaced out. Who's going to be the one trusted to set that ball screen more often than not? Mark Williams. So to see them develop chemistry in the pick and roll, which is going to be a fun thing to watch in real time. We haven't been critical of Mark lately, but we've been curious of what's been going on certain times where he looks a little tentative getting to the rim, where he hasn't necessarily gotten the same angles that he's gotten earlier in the year. So I think that Jalen helps that a lot because defenses are going to have to guard somebody differently because of Jalen's capabilities, the unique skill set he has offensively that most defenses usually don't have to take into account. So I really do think Mark's going to be a major beneficiary because his guy who's matched up with him is going to have to do a lot in the way of cleaning things up when Jalen Green's getting downhill.
Yep.
Is this the best vertical spacer that Jalen Green has played with?
I mean, it's not even comparable. On a professional level, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think playing off of a guy like Şengün, there's clearly some benefits there. Şengün's a good passer. I think Mark's a good passer. Not exactly his strong suit and what you're going to build an offense around. But I do think it'll be so interesting to have two guys at two main positions that are like top tier athletes. Mark's verticality, Mark's athleticism, Mark's speed, along with Jalen's verticality, Jalen's athleticism, Jalen's speed. That's a really hard duo to stop above the rim and that can play off of each other. I think a lot of this does hinge, though, a little more directly on, is Jalen Green going to grow and develop as a passer, Espo? Because something we talked about over the summer a lot was, his shot selection isn't the best, and his playmaking, the numbers are all right, but there's certainly a decision-making that you could sometimes question. I think with Mark, we've seen his games a lot of times depend on, is he getting the ball? Is he getting it in the right places instead of just going and creating his own offense? So I wonder if Jalen makes a leap in that way.
I mean, he's 23. I think he's bound to make a leap here. Plus, he's had the benefit of sitting here and watching this offense, working with Coach Ott, looking at film, seeing how successful this team has been with sharing the ball. You match that with the ability to put that pressure on the rim, which will open up opportunities for both Mark and Oso. I think in that dunker spot, I think there's no doubt that his passing, just by default with the group he's playing with, is going to look better because the opportunities are probably going to be a little bit easier to get it to guys with that athleticism and with that shooting ability that he hasn't really played with before.
That's a good point you mentioned as well. Coming into this season, the most games Jalen Green had missed in a season was 15. And right now we're at 37 and counting, and obviously that's not to, remind us of what we've been so upset by, but he's been able to watch the game through a different viewpoint than he hasn't in his entire career. And it gets to a certain point that when you're over there, one, you cherish and appreciate being out there. So I don't think there's ever going to be any question of how hard he's going to play when he gets out there. But two, things slow down, and you see it from a different viewpoint. You're talking to guys when Book's coming down to sit next to you. You're sitting next to the coaches. Dillon Brooks is sitting next to you. And they're telling you things, and you're seeing things from different ways that you would even see through watching film. I think we'll see that pay off when he gets back on the floor. We'll see a different level of comfort, a different Jalen Green than we've seen, because you mentioned how young he is. Even though this is his 5th season in the NBA, he's still a very young player, and we've seen young guys in this system, under this coaching staff, develop a lot. So that makes it very exciting to see what he's going to get from this new perspective and also this staff.
So I know we've had questions about the Mark Williams impact on offense recently. Eric, I go back to the conversation we had prior to the season starting where we were talking about pick and roll pairings, and I think for a majority we were on the Devin Booker and Mark Williams pick and roll pairing. I went left though, and I said Jalen and Mark, and that's the one I was looking forward to most because Devin's getting double teamed more often than not. There's significantly less opportunity for a rim rolling big to have an impact on an offense if the pocket pass is just simply never there because the ball handler is getting double teamed. With Jalen, look at that Clippers game. Zubac was close to the level, but he wasn't outright at the level and definitely wasn't blitzing. It was still drop coverage. He was just higher up the floor and then getting back home. If Jalen's consistently getting dropped, which I imagine he will, for one, the pull-up three is there for him, and that's something that we talked a whole lot about. But for two, opportunity to engage that big after a great screen and set from Mark, hit him on pocket passes or lobs over the top or other passes to the periphery off of his roll gravity. Once you hit him 3 or 4 times, there's a wheel that keeps on moving. It keeps on moving. And now you got to deal with 2 on the ball with Devin. And now it kicks to the second side. And now Jalen's running the pick and roll with Mark Williams. It's a lot to deal with for a defense. And I think that is why I think Mark is probably best positioned from anybody to receive more impact because of the presence of Jalen. And it's just off the threat of him turning the corner and what that does to help defenders.
Man, I think it's like the perfect amount of gravity to pull him in, because with Book, he could also, and I guess Jalen could do it too, but he's so proficient in that mid-range. And I think teams are going to be a little bit more okay with Jalen taking the contested mid-range shot, simply because percentage-wise, it's a lot lower than his rim takes or, of course, his threes. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to give him the paint. And they don't want to give him the paint more than they don't want to give Devin Booker the paint, because they know that he can make an explosive play. And so you give Mark another like inch or two of separation for him to get up and for him to dunk. And like you mentioned, Steven, like almost that first play, I feel like it was when Zubats was the one who came over and Mark was able to take advantage. And Jalen was a willing passer. I think that combination is so much fun. And we talk about how like athletic this team is now with Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro and Mark Williams, and he's just going to fit in so well into that culture and the highlight plays, and they're all going to open up space. It's going to be a fun combination between all of them, but those two specifically.
I mean, they don't have anybody this type of athletic.
This is like a top 5 athlete in the NBA.
This guy, I think the people that benefit the most is us that get to watch this. The posters, the athleticism, the things we're going to see that we haven't necessarily seen so far this year, because there's just not a guy out there that does what Jalen Green does for this group. I mean, we talk about the guards trying to throw alley-oops to Mark. Well, how are they going to do it for Jalen? Because that's going to be something that they have to consider too. He can play above the rim, and I'm looking forward to that first time he raises up and he throws it down on somebody, and we get that excitement from a guard. I can't remember the last time we've had a guard like
Gerald Green.
Gerald
guy, the Greens.
Gerald, Jason Richardson.
assassin.
Like, you got to go all the way back to those kind of guys. Since we've seen that from a guard. I mean, Bledsoe had a little bit of it when he started, but then he had the knee injuries. That's something that I'm super excited for. By the way, I think it was the math to the power of Joe. Yeah, it said, didn't Dillon Brooks hint that Jalen Green would be coming off the bench? Dwayne clarified that he's going to be starting, but he'll come out first and then he'll come back in towards the end of the first or beginning of the second to play with the second unit. So he will not be coming off the bench, but they will have a rotation for him where he is playing some with that second.
So him in the second unit means that he's playing with Colin. It's going to be him, Colin, and then some combination of Royce, Oso, and Jordan Goodwin, or another Ryan Dunn in the mix. Like, there's a cycle of guys that they could be playing in that lineup with. That's a fast lineup. And they love to get stops too. It's not like they're playing fast in the half court. They're playing off of stops and they're getting out. It's a track race.
You think it'll be Royce that goes to the bench, not Grayson? You think they'll go to that?
It would be Royce.
Yeah.
It would be Royce just for the functionality part of Grayson being able to do more of those periphery things that create and manipulate advantages.
And Jordan Ott did say Jalen Green would come back and he would start. I believe that was 2 games ago in pregame. He mentioned that. I want to talk about Colin Gillespie. That's the guy that I want to highlight here before we predict this road trip. And then get out of here on a fun Monday, PHNX Suns, because... A fun day. There's been a lot of Colin Gillespie love this season, as there should be. Right? Colin's had a fantastic season. He leads the team in steals. I believe he leads them in three-pointers made as well. He's one of the best percentage shooters from deep in the NBA. His playmaking, his rebounding have been great. Like, he has just been all around awesome. He has been serviceable in the starting position, but recently, there has been a little bit of a drop-off when it comes to offensive production. Now, all players go through dips. I don't think it's just because Colin's been starting that this is happening, but I do think that him coming off of the bench in this super fire, super powered 6-man role is perfect for Colin Gillespie. He is capable of being a starter in this league. I believe he's really proved that with how he's even played without the offensive contributions, continuing to rebound, assist, and play defense. But coming off of the bench is going to give this team such an insane punch for when teams are kind of needing a breather. Collin's going to come in and Collin's going to reap the benefits from the added confidence that he's gained from starting and from having these performances. But when he shares the floor with Jalen Green, I think it's going to be maybe the most mutually beneficial relationship besides what we talked about with Devin Booker, because I think we've seen that with Book and Collin on the floor as well, to have somebody who could take the pressure off of Jalen Green, who can handle the ball, who can distribute when Jalen's playing with the twos. I know that we think, oh, Jalen Green's going to be playing with the bench mob. Put the ball in Jalen Green's hand, clear out, let him isolate and make decisions, and I'm sure they'll do that. But Collin, I think, is still going to be like kind of running the show a little bit off of the bench, while Jalen can play off of the ball, can make cuts, and can take advantage of weaker matchups. Plus, I don't think there will be an iteration of this team where Collin's going to be on the floor getting the best perimeter defender. Right now, when Devin Booker's off the floor, you even heard Rex Chapman say it, like, Collin Gillespie's the guy that they look to, and Collin Gillespie is really high on the scouting report now. Collin will now share the court with either Devin Booker, Jalen Green, or Grayson Allen if both Book and Green are resting at all times. And that is going to relieve just a little bit of pressure from a guy who can handle it, but would be better off if guys can't focus on him as much.
Well, we talked about Mark being potentially tired. This is the most minutes that we've seen Collin play since his Villanova days. So there's probably a wall that he's hit a little bit as well, which going back to the bench can help on that front too. Plus it gets him back in that rhythm that got him going early in the season. There's nothing but benefit, I think, for him to go back and come off the bench being that sixth man.
Yeah, he can get back to his sixth player of the year campaign, which he was very well on track to do. And then injury said, hold on for a minute with that. But as he gets back to that, I think I mentioned 49.6% on catch and shoot threes for Collin. He's only shooting 3.5 catch and shoot attempts. If you're shooting 50% on anything, you should probably be taking more of that shot. You should probably be taking double the amount that you actually are. So if I mentioned Royce being at 5.4 catch and shoot attempts and Grayson being at 6.5, Collin should be somewhere in the middle of those two. And he might need to take more than even Grayson is at times, just because he's that good of a shooter, and he's going to be receiving a lot of the attention, from a lot of the attention that Jalen's going to be kind of earning when he has the ball in his hands. And I think some of the actions they can get into with him on the floor with Jalen, even if he's off the ball from Jalen, I think is going to put him in position to just be successful, because you have to help from somewhere. If the threat of Jalen turning the corner is that substantial, you don't want him dunking on your center too many times.
We do.
I mean, of course we do. So at some point, they're going to start committing more help. You commit more help. Now Collin's attacking closeouts, no different than Royce and Grayson when I'm talking about the starting unit with Devin. So he's going to reap the benefits similarly to what Grayson and Royce will from when Jalen comes back. But I think even more specific to those reserve units, that means Collin can be even more aggressive defensively. If he has more energy to exert on that end and they're spending time in transition, I'm going to go ahead and call it now. Collin's going to throw the first oop to Jalen.
Ooh.
And it's going to happen probably
Not
because of a steal.
Grayson Allen?
No, because it's probably going to come from a steal from Collin in some capacity. Jalen's got 15 points, so I don't have to look at the basket for 4 or 5 possessions in a row. I'm about to just go hound this ball handler for 94 feet. That ball's going to get a little loose, and Jalen's never going to hesitate to transition from defense to offense. And it's probably going to happen here on the Mortgage Matchup Center court.
I'm glad you mentioned minutes, Espo, because I wanted to look. I was curious. Collin's played 400 more minutes this season than he had in his entire NBA career coming into this season. Combined. So he had played 687 minutes in years 1 and years 2 combined. He's at 1,094 this season. So don't get me wrong, Collin is still finding ways to impact games. Even last night where the shot wasn't falling, we still made his presence felt. But we talk so much about moving down on the totem pole, moving down on the scouting report. That's going to benefit him so much, because I think he's kind of maybe met that limit of, all right, I've been exerting a lot of energy because of the injuries on this roster. I'm ready to take a deep breath. I'm ready for a reprieve. I think he will be a massive beneficiary as far as that goes. Not even mentioning the chemistry that they're going to have on the court, on the back court together. I just think the fact that he is going to be facing a lesser defender. He's going to be facing other teams' second units once again. A lot of the things that probably are starting to feel pretty heavy for him are going to start feeling a little bit lighter, because it's just going to be different circumstances. And I think we'll see that a lot for him. And again, he isn't even in a quote-unquote slump, he's still shooting above 40% from 3 on the season. So, these things happen. It's a make-or-miss league. I'm pretty sure we could be talking about tomorrow night after the game that he just knocked down 5 threes. Wouldn't be surprised. So it'll be exciting to see that and just see him have that little level of freedom and see this confident version of him take on lesser parts of other teams' rotation.
Sean's feeling quite aligned by the idea of Colin throwing an oop to JG.
Major alignment going
until
on
it
in the
actually
chat.
happens.
Boy.
Jacob with a $5 super chat says, Grayson Allen, Jalen Green, Devin Booker, Dillon Brooks, Mark Williams. That needs to be our starters. Colin could make us too small. Don't forget, Allen shot 44% from 3 in the last 2 years. We all agree that that's the starting 5, right?
Yes, I think that is where they will start. It would not shock me if they experiment with Royce at some point in there as well. But I think in the end, Steven's right with why they'll go with this lineup.
It makes sense to me. Like you said, I see Royce experimentation. I don't. At one point, I was thinking maybe experiment with Colin in there, and I'm not. I think I even mentioned it maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, just because he's a pure point guard in that sense. But I think because of the lack of size at the 4, you can't really risk having that lack of size in the backcourt either.
I think Royce might not start, but I think he closes games because not just the 3-point shooting, but if Devin's getting double and the attention that he's getting, the decision making from a secondary playmaker, I think it's proven to be as relevant at any point in this recent week of games than at any other point this season. And then the last part with Royce is the inbound passing. I don't think that gets nearly enough attention because if you can't get the ball to where it needs to get to in those meaningful moments, it's going to take away from the advantage that you're trying to create. So Royce being able to always make sharp decisions, getting the ball where it needs to be for them to run the play after a timeout or after a dead ball that they want to, that really, really matters. They don't win that game against Oklahoma City without him for multiple reasons. Ability to inbound a basketball is one of the
Lost
biggest.
art.
He's like the Michael Jordan of Joe Ingles.
Or you just say he's the Jay Crowder of this team.
There you go. I think that's the second best.
He would
comp that
like
just
he
got.
would like the Jingles comp considering the time that they spent.
I'll say a bunch of guys that played together in Utah.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think
Shout out Quinn Snyder.
the fascinating part with the closing lineups
has
is
a
they
type,
might just
in case you
that
haven't
is
paid
true.
attention.
They might just run the hot hand. If Colin's having a
Yeah.
great game, he's good enough defensively. If Grayson's having a good game, he's good enough defensively. If Royce is having a good game, I think if Ryan Dunn is out there in the closing lineup, if possibly you're trying to hold off a team from getting buckets, if you're holding on to a lead, they have options, and Jalen Green provides maybe their most exciting, unique option left. Show of hands, who's excited?
I can't put
Ayrton?
both hands up.
Ayrton has both of his hands up. I'll put both hands up. So I put the hands up and play my
Oh,
song.
that's the way you
The
went.
Phoenix
with putting your
Suns
hands
fly
up? Oh, my-
away, going up the
we went
Western
Miley
standings,
Cyrus, really?
winning
Oh.
3 games in a row.
He's still going.
6-game
Put
road
your
trip
hands in the air,
coming up.
wave 'em like you don't care.
So many different ways you could have went. That's you went the
Look, let's go ahead and look forward instead of looking back, okay? Let's look at the next 6 games for the Phoenix Suns. They embark on a 6-game road trip really quick at Miami, at Detroit, at New York, at Brooklyn, at Philly, at Atlanta. Let's go across and give our record predictions. Tell me what losses they get, if any, in your record prediction. Steven, Miami, Detroit, New York, Brooklyn, Philly, Atlanta. The Suns go?
that Monday, Tuesday back-to-back in Brooklyn and then Philly is going to be a gauntlet. Detroit or Brooklyn's been one of the better defenses. They're very active. They double team everywhere. That's going to be hard to navigate. Philly's been a lot better than you probably have seen. I want to go 4-2 over the 6-game.
And
East
those
Coast
are the 2
sweep.
losses?
Not saying those are the 2 losses. I'm just saying they might lose one of those because of the back-to-back nature of it.
Espo?
Look, this is they're facing teams that are combined 65 and 49. This is not a cakewalk.
At
The
all.
only one,
At all.
the only one that isn't a top 9 in the East is the Nets, and like you mentioned, is back-to-back nights, 6 games in 10 nights. They're going 4-2. I think they lose the first one in Miami. I think they lose in Detroit.
So
Okay.
back-to-back losses for the Suns coming up.
I could see that, and then running the back half of 4 off there.
I also have 4-2 in a different way. They're going to win the opener in Miami. They're going to lose 2 in a row. Detroit, New York, hard to beat the same team twice, especially that recently. Get wins in Brooklyn, Philly, and then close out with a win in Atlanta.
The Phoenix Suns haven't won in Atlanta since World War II. So
Dang.
it's gonna be a tough one to win at Atlanta. Plus they're playing without Trae Young. I do think they pick up a win there. I'm curious about that game. I think they beat the Knicks. I think they lose to Brooklyn the next game. I think it's like the classic, like you're riding high. Not that this team's going to sleep on them, but I think Brooklyn is sneaky good, and Michael Porter Jr. is going to be really showing out because
Trying to get traded.
he wants to go to the Warriors to get traded. The Nets want him to get the most amount of value, and I just feel like winning against the Knicks and losing to Brooklyn kind of just feels like it's going to happen. And I think you lose to Detroit. I think you go 4-2 as well. I think 6-0 is certainly on the table. I think 3-3 is certainly on the table as well. 5-1 statistically impossible to me. No, but it's all on the table.
The Nets, really though, that would be so counter to what this team.
I don't think it's because they're sleeping. I think that, like Steven said, the Nets kind of provide a unique challenge, and I could see them going 6-0. I don't know why. It's more of like a gut feeling with Brooklyn, where it's the team that when you look at this, you think that's the one that they're most guaranteed to win. And maybe that means that they will, but I just kind of have a feeling as we get closer to February 5th, Michael Porter Jr.'s like powers are going to be increasing. Plus, I haven't seen a podcast clip from him in a while, so I think he's pretty focused. So I don't know. I feel like Brooklyn might be the one, but I think 4-2 is where I'm sitting. Detroit and Brooklyn are the losses to me, but Detroit's also been banged up recently, so it'll be interesting to see if they have their full
They'll
squad
be
in a
healthy
couple
before
games.
Thursday, I bet you that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Duran's back, but I know Cunningham and Stewart will be back for that game.
Mark says the podcast give him power. Sure. Somebody needs to unplug the power from his podcast studio.
That's not what's been giving him power lately. If you know, you know.
You can follow the show at PHNX
Ice Spice is that?
_Suns.
Shocked I knew that, huh?
Espo knowing Ice Spice is the biggest shock of the Sun season, for sure. Look, we're going to have some fun. A post-game show tomorrow against Miami. That's going to be a good time. We'll be back here with a pregame show, a postgame show. Of course, in the meantime, for all the updates that you need on the Suns, you can follow us at PHNX _Suns. That's on Twitter. That's on Instagram. The season's hopefully only going to get more fun, so feel free to share the show with your friends if you're trying to spread the good word of the Suns, or if you have other Suns fans who don't know about us, make sure you share them. Share the fun. Of course, you can follow the Freckled Mamba behind the Mac, making all of the magic happen, per usual, at Freckled Mamba. Of course, you can follow Steve at Steven PG3. That's Steve with a PH.
Don't get my guy like that.
You can follow Greg at Espo. Catch him on Southwest Bias weekday mornings. You can follow Gilbert at Gil McGregor _. You can follow me. What would be the extension of my name?
You tell us.
Eric Thin.
Boo!
You can follow me at
Gangster Disciples Jr.
ERIKBY. I don't know. What did you just say?
Gangster Disciple Jr.
That's real. That's what they called me in high school. Follow me at ERIKRUBY, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.